Welcome to Health System CIO's interview with Kiran Mysore, Chief Data Analytics Officer with Sutter Health. I'm Anthony Guerra, founder and editor-in-chief. Kiran, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. It's a pleasure to
You-
be here.
You're very welcome. Kiran, you want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role?
Sure. I'm part of Sutter Health. Sutter Health is a not-for-profit integrated health system that is based in California. We are based actually in Sacramento, but we serve patients, about 3.5 million patients across Northern and Central California regions. And we operate, many different acute facilities, more than 28 acute facilities that have about 4,200 beds. We also operate hundreds of imaging centers, surgery centers, and so on, serving 3.5 million patients. We're proud to be in the California area. We have about 57,000 employees and many, many thousands of clinicians that are focused on delivering the best quality of care. And my role at Sutter Health is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer. So my focus is really to make it easy for our system and to get access to information and insights in the best way possible. And I'm proud to lead a team that works very closely with our clinicians and practitioners every single day.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kieran. So you're going to be speaking at the upcoming Vive conference, and your session title, I think to try and be cute with these titles, Pour Myself a Cup of Innovation. So, you know what? It's very interesting that everybody wants to be innovative. Sometimes we certainly see people now with innovation in the title, which is kind of interesting. Um, you want to talk about innovation, and your focus obviously is data analytics. So, I guess my first question is, in your mind, what is the opportunity or what is the need for innovation in the data analytics area?
Great question, right? So to answer that question, I'll give a little bit of quick context and some background as well. The space of data analytics has been around for a very long time. I mean, it goes back decades, right? It is all about how you use information to make good business decisions. Now, that process of making good business decisions is different depending on the industry. And I've had the fortune of being in many different industries, not just healthcare, but also retail, financial services, and so on. And the mechanism of how you use information to make decisions is very different depending on what you're actually trying to do. In the space of healthcare, we are trying to solve obviously some very big problems around the clinical side of things and also on the operational side of things, the risk side of things. And the availability of information at your fingertips in a very easy and concise way is paramount to that decision making. And when I think about innovation and the changes that are happening in the space of data analytics, clearly our goal is to move at the speed of the business. And in this case, the business can be a physician, it could be a hospital administrator, it could be an operator. Um, we need to be able to answer those questions quickly because they have many things to take care of. But at the same time, you can't do that without spending the right amount of foundational effort in building the infrastructure and the data needed to support those answers. So I always talk about the two speeds of business data analytics in the business. One speed is the speed of the business, and one speed is the speed of foundation building. And the trick is to combine these two in the best way so that you can actually deliver value at the point where it's needed. So to me, innovation is really about getting sometimes down to the fundamentals and the basics of understanding, what is the most important piece of information and insight that can be delivered at the point that it's needed. And then using a range of tools, and there are many tools out there, and AI is all around us, and there's a lot of buzz around that. But using the range of tools to deliver that information in the best way possible. So to me, it's as simple as that. Obviously, the methods of delivery change and have evolved over the times, right? So uh, everyone loves their favorite Excel spreadsheet, right? Where you can go and pivot information and get what you need. But I think today the nature of AI has evolved to where you can ask questions and receive answers very quickly as well. So the key of innovation is to keep up with the times and be able to deliver the information at the right time at the right place.
Keep up with the times. I like that. Um, so you're making a lot of great points, and I think one of the major points that you're making is that you have to get the foundation. You use the word. It's in the write up, I think, for your session. You have to get the foundational elements correct. So if we've got disparate siloed data, if we've got bad data, if we've got data that's the same piece of data is named four different ways in four different places, and people want you to just do magic. They want you to, well, you're saying, wait a minute, there's like, this is a lot of work has got to be done under the covers, however, under the hood, however you want to put it. A lot of work has got to be done before I can elegantly and beautifully bring information together and put it in front of you. Because as it's currently constituted, if I brought all this stuff together and put it in front of you, it would not have a lot of value or veracity or usefulness. Am I correct? Tell me more about that.
Anthony, that's spot on, right? In many cases, bad data leads to bad decisions. And so the job of a CDAO is to really make sure that the analytic accuracy is matched with good data accuracy and good data quality. Now, I see this as an iterative process. It's not necessarily, we're going to go build it and everyone's going to come, right? We see this as an iterative process. And what that means, what I mean by that is, we take a look at the most important information that the business and the hospital administrators and others need. Um, and this is information about our patients, information about our operations, information about disease states and disease conditions, and so on. And we sort of identify the most critical data elements and data fields and metrics we need. And then from there, we really put some effort around establishing a proper foundation for that. And you're right, I think there is a huge amount of fragmentation in the data. Data comes from many different places. So you have to connect it well. You have to have the right master data that references, what is the version of the patient or geography or the therapy and so on. You got to have the right master data in place. And then the right measurement of data quality. So if you can understand where the data started and how it made a transformation and made it to the final space, you have to understand, how it has changed in quality over time. And quality can be has many different dimensions. Like, is it duplicated? Is it, incomplete? Is it current? I mean, there are many aspects of it. So we think about all of these things, and we then assess, the efficacy of the decision based on the right quality of data. And to some extent, there are methodologies to do this. We have a very comprehensive focus on understanding our data end to end through tools and technologies. We measure and track quality of it very carefully. We model the data really well so we can understand how these connections can be made. Um, and then we have, links into our business stakeholders very closely as well, because we are on a day-to-day basis sitting with them, learning and understanding and helping them through their day-to-day. And that gives us insights about, where should we focus on with
Mm.
quality data. So
Yeah, that's a really great point. I mean, it's like almost like governance,
it
right? I
is,
mean,
it is
it,
right,
right.
exactly.
So it's governance in there. You mentioned, it almost sounded like you're talking about almost use cases, this iterative concept. We can't boil the ocean, right? I'm not going to get Sutter Health, the giant enterprise. I'm not going to get all the data clean. That can't even be the goal. But I think what you're saying is, let's work with the users, let's develop use cases, then let's drill down on the data that comes into play to present them with what they want in this use case. Let's get this clean. Let's get that right.
Exactly. And also my team has a mechanism of connecting the dots. So when we get requests about certain data sets or information, and we get it from many different places, we can connect the dots and say, hey, look, these groups of information seem to be the most in demand. Let's make sure we put some effort around that and work through that really well. So that's a very important aspect of things as well. So the prioritization, the governance, and then just sequencing the most important, you know, and valuable data sets is important. We've also done something around making it easy to get information about information. So I call that, metadata. Um, and we've created a thing called a marketplace where you could go in and essentially look at the most popular and most trusted pieces of information. There could be reports, dashboards, it could be definitions of metrics. So there is level of trust built, when you start to consume information and make decisions. And we've also created a sort of a social rating system where people that use information and found value can rate these artifacts with 5 stars, right? And so when others see it, they know that this is, accurate and good and can be used. So we're trying to make that process agile and easy, so more and more people can come and use the data and be trustful of the data.
That's interesting. It sounds like you're leveraging elements of both things like ChatGPT and Amazon. So in Amazon, obviously you purchaser customer ratings are a huge now benefit to when you're going to buy something. You could see what everyone's thought of it and all that. So you're
Right.
working in that type of thing. Also, you mentioned citations. When we do something now on ChatGPT, we ask for information or
Yep.
recommendations. It's going to give you the source. You can click on the link and see where it's getting that from. All these kind of things, as you said, build trust in what people are looking at because we know physicians are smart folks. They like to drill down, they want to see, right? So they want to see where all this information's coming from.
Exactly. And we have to make it easy for them to access this information
Yeah.
too. Physicians don't want to click, 7 screens to get what they need. They just want it easily available and accessible. And so our design and our thinking has really around how do we do that? How do we make it as easy as possible? And we are leveraging capabilities around the generative AI, where you can ask a question, get the answer, but also get reference to the trusted report that actually fed that answer. So there is that level of interactivity and trust built as well. So we're taking advantage of all the emerging technologies to be able to do this in a most effective way.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about what I guess what I would call the last mile of data presentation. So you've got sort of the underlying data that could be all over the place in different systems at different hospitals, at different practices, third parties outside. Get all that data. You want to clean that up, get it together, use cases. Um, when they're looking at this information, are we talking about sort of in the EMR where they're actually going to like the screen that they're looking at ultimately? Are we talking about something in the EMR? And the reason I ask is because I'm thinking about how important it is to everybody to be able to see data in the way they like to see data.
That's right.
Some people, as you said, like to use Excel. I use Microsoft OneNote a lot, right? People use, sometimes you want to see things in rows or columns, or you want to see colors. Some people don't like colors. Point being, people like to see data in the way they can. And I'm wondering if as you're putting all this together, does it go into the EMR? And then is there a degree of customization people can have to where I want to drag this over here, I want this over here, all
Yeah.
those kind of things?
Absolutely. Anthony, great point, right? Um, we have spent a lot of time, and there's a whole part of my team that is dedicated to really making it easy for our users to see data where they are. So it could be in the EMR, and yes, we do make it easy inside of the EMR to see critical information. Um, in some cases, we've actually put up reports and dashboards on large screens in the hospital, so people can actually glance at the performance of the hospital and the real-time nature of things like bed capacity, for example, utilization of beds and so on. So we put those up, and that makes it easy to understand what's happening. In some cases, our users are very sophisticated. They want the detailed data and they want to build their own models on top of it or run some analysis. So we made it easy through various different tools to enable them to do that. And lastly, in some cases, our data science users and folks, analysts want raw data so they can actually build sophisticated AI models. And so we've also created sort of areas where they can go build those models as well. So Anthony, to your question, I think we have to really think about how data is consumed. We
Hmm.
have to think about the tools at our disposal. We have to think about the method in which, is it rows and columns? Is it graphs? Is it, trends? Is it simple Q&A sort of a thing? So we all those capabilities at our disposal, and we match the capability to the need and then deploy that. And do that in a very cost-effective way too, because you could have many, many tools, and part of our journey is also to rationalize the most important tools we should be using, and then doubling down on those and developing capabilities in those tools.
Very good. So one of the biggest issues going on in healthcare IT is this idea about CIOs, they hate interfaces, right? They hate interfaces. Interfaces are with third-party apps and things like that. But and I'm gonna just play devil's advocate here, okay? The CIOs hate interfaces because they're hard to maintain, they're expensive to maintain, and then when one of the applications on one side or the other gets an upgrade, you break the interface. It's got to be, so it's difficult to move data around through interfaces. They really like staying in suite. Your EMR vendor has a whole bunch of applications, and they would love for, if they have one, like, let's use that. So then it's, all the data is there. We don't have to worry about it. On the other side of that tension, as I'll call it in the industry, is innovation. Because a lot of times the users will say, well, this app over here is fantastic. It's great. I love it. I know you want me to go with the in-suite app, but it's not as good. This one's better. And then there's the tension between, hey, this will do maybe 80% of what you want, and the user will say, yeah, but I want that other 20%. Why can't I get what I want? Because
Yeah.
it'll be better for patient care. You're in an interesting position because you have to deal with the fallout of going out of suite, right? Because the data doesn't flow as well. People want data to flow. People come to you and say, where's the data? And you're going, well, they just picked another one, another niche product, and we got to get that integrated if we want the data to flow. Tell me your thoughts on that overall dynamic.
It's a great challenge to solve, right? And something we deal with every single day. Um, So the question of in-suite versus out is a perennial problem I think we've all tried to solve over a long period of time. The reality is there's no one suite that solves all the issues, and so integration becomes a necessity. And also the nature of the data itself. I mean, your time and attendance system is different from your ERP system, is different from your EHR, but the integrated insights are necessary to run the hospital operations, yeah, as an example. So the reality of it is integration is necessity. Interfaces are to some degree, the right interfaces are a necessity. But that said, I think we can be smart about taking advantage of a platform, a common platform that can connect all of these together. And in our case at Sutter Health, we are migrating to a cloud platform that allows us to connect many different data sources easily together. And we start to then build that single source of truth. And the single source of truth isn't just one database, but it is an ecosystem, an architecture that connects disparate types of data, multimodal data, and then cleanses it and catalogs it and then presents it in a very simple interface through a very common semantic layer. And semantic meaning, a commonly understood set of data elements. The question is, how do you do this, and how do you connect all of this easily together? Um, because cloud has advanced significantly, there are many modern capabilities now around data integration that we are taking advantage of. It's not as simple as moving data. In some cases, we can actually go to a source and actually run a query in the source without actually moving the data. So
Hmm.
sometimes you want to do that because the volumes are extensively large and the time it takes to move is also very large. In other cases, we work with third-party vendors to register their data sources in our system. And so then we inherit and understand their catalog really well. And then we're able to absorb information from there very quickly. And we do the same thing on our side. We can register our catalog with somebody else, and they can pull data from us very easily as well. So that whole ecosystem is really important, and that building that right is what I mean by building the foundation. That is what that takes time. Um, and so we are going to do that in layers and build that out as we go. But I think to answer your question in a short way, yes, that is a challenge. When you can put some thought upfront in architecting it right, getting some help from your cloud, ecosystem partners. I think you can really establish a good mechanism to be successful. So that's something that we're working on very actively as well.
Excellent. As you were talking, I was thinking about, your title, and as I started to list the titles that would fall sort of C-suite IT titles have really exploded over the past 5 years, 10 years, 5, 8. Um, the traditional ones are still there. You got your CEO, your CFO, your COO, your CMO in a health system, but under IT, I forgot CT. So under IT now, you've got sort of the CIO is usually the head of that IT shop. Your chief medical, now you have a CMIO and a CNIO. You have your CISO in charge of security, your CTO that deals with a lot of infrastructure, titles like yours. So the IT related titles have exploded with good reason. It's just how the business is run. And these are warranted, especially in an organization the size of Sutter. Um, but so I guess my question to you is you have and I'm probably missing some, you have a very robust a group of ITC suiters at some place like Sutter, could be closer to 10 at this point. How do you make sure you're all on the same page and work together?
Great question. And some of this actually extends beyond IT as well, even though in sort of digital, for example, in Sutter,
Right.
we actually sort of label our organization as digital because it encompasses not just the technology part, which is very important and critical, but also the data analytics side of things and the innovation side of things. And in innovation from a product mindset, it's really more about looking at the corners of what's the art of the possible and running there and getting that capability in place. So you have many different stakeholders. You're right. Every stakeholder has, or a leader has, an area of expertise and a domain that is relevant to your point. This is how we do business. We establish ourselves in the context of what are the overall organizational goals,
Mhm.
and we've done a really nice job of sort of looking at our North Star, which our CEO has set ahead of us, and our North Star really sets us in the juxtaposition of, what are we doing today? Where are we going as an organization? And what are the tactics and strategies we use to get there? And so we call that Destination 2030, and it's really a mechanism for us to elevate our patient care, run the efficacy of our hospitals to the next level, drive more research and drive more innovation in everything that we do. So those principles and guiding principles help us establish what the operating plan looks like every year. So
Mhm.
this year, we're going to take that as a North Star and say, what are all the great initiatives we're going to go do? And then as part of that, there is a very good alignment around, yes, we all agree this is where we need to go. This is how we serve our patients. And this is how we're going to enable these capabilities along the way. Now, the specifics of how we do that and the actual details of how we do that, that gets done at a more intimate basis. So I work, for example, with our chief technology officer very closely because I rely on a cloud platform that is managed by that organization. And I need to make sure that the data that I upload and manage and cleanse is supported in the best way. And security is a key part of this. Privacy is a key part of this. So I work with our chief compliance officer and our chief security officers to make sure that we protect the data. So there is a level of interdependence that already exists. And so we recognize that, make sure that our plans acknowledge that, and then we work together to achieve the overall business goal. So yes, that's the level of collaboration and cooperation we need to make this successful.
All right, very good. We have just a couple minutes left. I think I want to ask you about, because I've read some things out there, not about Sutter, but in general about this concept of pilot fatigue. Um, right? So everyone wants to be innovative, and uh, a lot of health systems, they can't find. In some cases, they say we can't find it off the shelf. We can't buy it from people who haven't sold in healthcare. So we want to bring them in. We want to do innovation centers. We want to sort of help mold the product and work with the company to make sure it suits our needs. Um, that's a little different than the general pilot fatigue, which is sort of we want to try it's almost like getting too excited in a store, right? We want to try
Yes.
all this stuff. It's amazing and we love it. Let's yeah, yeah, yeah. The organization only has so much capacity for change and change management. Every pilot run is sort of taking some effort out of someone, right? Someone's got to be involved in the pilot, and that is taking some effort. So there has to be upside there. What are your thoughts in general around being careful people don't overdo change, overburden the clinicians and the users with these things they want to test out? And what's your thoughts on this concept of pilot fatigue?
Great question again, Anthony. When we think about pilots, right? I mean, they're a necessity and to some degree because you want to, like you said, prove out the technology or the capability in and make sure they're customizable to our needs, right? So many people go and do the pilots, but a lot of times once you sort of prove it, either you've got resounding success and you want to go all in and go buy the product, or maybe there are some marginal or maybe some muted success, and so you sort of abandon it. um, we have to have some level of governance around all of these things in general. So at Sutter, we've established now AI, for example, if you think about AI pilots, everyone wants to go and work with partners to bring all of these AI solutions in-house. But there are some fundamentals you have to have in place. We can tell today very quickly if somebody that wants to do a pilot will be successful or not. And
Hmm.
the reason we can tell that is because we have a comprehensive set of questions that we ask as part of the governance before we get into the pilot. And these questions have been, through some trial and error, but also through some industry best practices and also through our knowledge of our environment. So we ask these questions. We certify some of the pilots to move forward based on favorable answers to those questions, and we've seen that the ones that pass and have a good success rate are the ones that we were able to early on identify problems with. So this thing, will it scale? Does it have the right privacy in place? Do you have the right stakeholder engaged and the right level of executive sponsorship? Do we have the data to support it, and do we have mechanisms to share data? These are some examples of questions we ask. Do we have the expertise? So to me, the pilot fatigue is a function of not asking these questions up front or not having robust governance processes in place that leads to a sort of a no man's land, if you will, where you've done the pilot, but now you don't know what to do next. And so that's important. And then lastly, the return on investment, right? That is something that we always think about. We actually ask our vendors to also show us models of how we would actually improve productivity or drive efficiency or growth or improve risk management through the use of these pilots. And so by thinking about business value and business benefit upfront, you can also quickly say, is this going to be successful or not? So that's sort of some of the elements of what we think about to move things forward in pilot. And we always think about scale day one. We always think about making sure that a pilot can actually scale all the way. And our questions are intended to sort of get at the root of that.
That's great, Kieran. 30-second final question. Best piece of advice for someone in your role at another health system.
Adopt a learning mindset. Things change very fast. So the more learning capabilities you have to absorb new information and be flexible to change, I think the more successful one would be. So
I bet you you're absorbing information every day. Kieran, I want to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You have a great day.
thanks, Anthony. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the time.